Great skills again by him. Oh, marvellous goal by Lewis.
Welcome to the Rangers Journey.
Good evening, Internet. This is the latest edition of the Rangers Journal podcast. It is Wednesday, the 22nd of October. We are now on the countdown to the first game of the Danny Röhl experience. Forgive my German pronunciation, I didn't grow up speaking it. Joining me to go through a little bit of a breakdown of the new additions to his team and just to look ahead to some of the squad is, first of all, Jock. Jock, good evening, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's good to be here and not sitting in your seat where I'm doing all the controls and everything, and I just get relaxed and just answer questions for a change.
I know it's actually been a while since I've hosted. Normally, I've just wanted to come on and rant, so now I need to have the decorum and the control. Stevie, you're always dapper, looking always dapper and smiley. How you doing?
Evening, lads. Evening, everybody. I'm good, thank you. Decorum, I like that word there. That's a good word. Let's try and keep to that tonight.
And the pinnacle of decorum is, of course, Craig. Craig, how you doing?
Absolutely. Very good, Ross. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. We love when you, especially when the boys from Northern Ireland come on, they just give us a little bit of staunchness.
Diversity
is the perfect word. Diversity is the perfect word for it. Of course, what more could you want? Of course, we're open to all. We're a pod open to all. Gentlemen, obviously, it's been a manic 24 hours in the world of Rangers, as it always is. We have the new manager in place, as of course the German Danny Röhl. I will not persist with it. We'll call him Danny Röhl. He was appointed yesterday. He was unveiled by the club, and over the last 24 hours or so, probably just starting off, Jock, it's probably been a little bit unfortunate that a lot of the press conferences and the interviews and stuff haven't really been about him, which could be a good thing, is that a lot of the pressure has been taken off him, and an appointment in the process of appointing him that's been a bit of a farce. Is that, could he perhaps use that to his advantage, that most of the media and most of the kind of, if you want to call it, the headlines and stuff have been focused on those above him? Kevin Thelwell, Patrick Stewart, Andrew Kavanagh have been kind of really front and centre with this. There's been a lot of interviews. There's been a lot of inches in the tabloids written. So would you like to think that he's perhaps been able to use this the first couple of days to come in just quietly and start his work properly?
Yeah, I think so. It's a fair assessment, like you say. Like the questions that he was asked at the time were, they're all sort of aimed towards, as you say, the hierarchy and what was previously. There was nothing really concerning him and him directly, and really what he plans to do. I thought it was just, for me, it was a bit wishy-washy, and it was just sort of rage, clickbait headline grabbing questions. Nothing really, as you say, personally. And I think that will allow him to just sort of go under the radar and then just get stuck into, obviously, what us as fans is wanting is, him to try and get a tune out of this squad that we have, and straight into the deep end and a must win, or at least try and grab some points from a game, and the game we have tomorrow. So he also seems kind of like a guy that would sort of go about his business quietly anyway. If that you've got that sort of demeanour, that personality about him. But granted, we only got snippets. We didn't really get too in depth with him. I found more the sort of the fan media stuff that came out afterwards, where it was sort of 1-to-1 with him. I gained a lot more from that than I did the full press conference that obviously the club put out. But yeah, I'm hoping that's the case. I do hope that the pressure does go to where it's supposed to go, because that's ultimately where all the pressure is at the moment. Because I think him coming in now, a clean slate with the players, I think the fans will give him a bit of time, and it will just be interesting to see how he takes what we have and try and moves us forward, I guess.
Absolutely. We're not focused on the press conference and stuff like that too much, but we just wanted to kind of get your initial thoughts first. Stevie, one thing I did like about Danny Röhl, what he spoke about in his dealings with the fan media, and probably it wasn't so much off the record, but it was a bit more informal, was that he was incredibly focused on the main points that he wanted to make was, at the moment, it was about getting results. It wasn't about winning with the style. It was about, we need to win first, and then we'll deal with style and philosophy and these kind of buzzwords afterwards, which was obviously the total opposite of what we were told with the previous manager, where it was, we want to win in a certain way. I mean, at this moment in time, that's what he needs to do, isn't it? He needs to really focus on just sticking points on the board for us.
Absolutely, mate. It's one game at a time, but he's got his first, second, and third priority is to win football games, and that's it. We'll all deal with like a style and whatever later on down the line, but he's got to build immediately. And the best way to do that is to win football games consistently. So yeah, that's got to be his aim. I quite liked the way he came across as well. I thought he was quite methodical. He seemed quite like driven and quite clear in what he was saying. Like again, the complete opposite to the previous guy. So straight away, you're thinking he's giving clear communications with the fans, which hopefully like reflects onto the players as well. You know, that's the man he is. So hopefully he's really similar with the players, makes it nice and simple for them, and gives it clear instructions and just gets them organised. There's only so much you can do in a couple of days, but just try and get a wee bit of his ideas across and really just give them a bit of confidence, because obviously the last 4 months the players' morale must be on the floor. So yeah, want that new manager buzz, but yeah, I think he kind of came across really well.
He did certainly. And Craig, and obviously, you don't want to play too much into it, but bearing in mind that he's obviously not been in Britain long. English clearly isn't his first language. It's probably easier for him to converse in German, but he's obviously worked around a lot of guys who understand the British game now. You know, he has come through the Red Bull, if you want to call it the Red Bull school. Guys like Ralf Rangnick, Jurgen Klopp, who obviously influenced by it, Ralph Hasenhüttl. So he's clearly a guy that has got no qualms about, you know, the job in front of him. He's obviously very, very open and honest about the job that he has to do. And something that was thrown at him, perhaps unfairly, was that he was perhaps going to be a yes man. But in the initial things that we've seen been presented by the media, he seems to be very, very far from just being a yes man. Am I right?
Well, I'm glad I've got this question, to be honest with you, because I live down here in Yorkshire, and Danny Röhl's been a bit of a thing down here for a bit. The achievements at Sheffield Wednesday had him marked down as somebody who was destined for bigger things and looks like a really, really talented coach. I feel that if the yes man thing had prevailed, I think we might have really missed out on the potential to get one of the very good young coaches in Europe and one of the most promising ones. And I understand why the club would have gone for Kevin Muscat and for Gerrard, given what had happened before. My fear was that actually Russell Martin was going to deprive us the opportunity of having Röhl in. Now, it's not a guarantee of success that he will. Even his own ability might not be enough, because there might be bigger challenges for him. But I don't think he's a yes man. I think he's a very, very smart, very bright coach. There's a lot on the stuff that we've been looking at, and I'm sure it'll come up, about the different ways he likes to press and whatever. For me, I'm not a massive student of that sort of thing. It's about the results that he gets. And he took a team of flipping under 11 BB kids and took them to midway up the championship from nowhere and kept that going the next year on a shoestring. I think the guy's got some talent. And I think if we get behind him and we cut out this yes man, or he's too young, or his win percentage isn't as good enough, or whatever, I think we've got a good one here. And I hope that'll prevail. And I hope people will see that as it goes. My fingers are crossed for that anyway. But it can't get any worse, really, can it?
I mean, it can, but I don't think it will.
Okay, it can, yeah.
But we don't think it will. Mitchell, fashionably late as usual. When the pod starts at 9, that does not mean you go to the toilet at 9.
I'll have you know, my laptop was doing a bloody update.
That whatever excuse you're pulling out, that's unacceptable. First of all, welcome. How are you?
The Ross League. I'm all the better for seeing your beautiful wee chops. Look at you. It's like the Jackson 5, but with more hair.
Oh, well, that's
good to see you, Mitch. Glad to hear it.
Mitchell, obviously, we're just going to have a wee talk about Danny Röhl. One thing that a comment that got put in here by Andrew is that the training in the initial videos looked better than anything we've seen under Russell Martin. I would probably want to disagree with that a little bit, only because I remember watching the videos of Russell Martin's training in St George's Park, and it looked good, if I'm being brutally honest. So I think they were probably at a stage, and we've been stung too many times not to read too much into the initial training videos because they're supposed to look good.
Do you know something as well, right? There's a few things with it. I am fully on board the Rock and Roll Express. I am there. I'm choo-choo, the driver is on the way. But I think the easiest win that Danny Röhl had coming into training yesterday and today, take the pressure off them. Literally just take the weight off the players and say, have fun. Because the last couple of months, you've not had fun. Like, none of these guys who are paid professional athletes have enjoyed the performances and the results that have followed the performances. The easiest thing that Danny Röhl can do in a couple of sessions is give them structure at the back to say, look, stay solid, you keep your man, do the basics, do them well, and then the rest will follow because your talent is naturally there. Otherwise, you wouldn't be at a club the size of Rangers. He's only had, by the time we kick off tomorrow night, he'll have had, 72 hours with the players. We can't expect miracles in 3 days. But what we can expect is to see a bit of an idea of the pathway of how we're going and what that looks like. So I think when it comes to it, I think the players undoubtedly looked happier. Thelo Asgard kind of touched on it in his pre-match press conference today of, he enjoyed things under Stevie Smith. He enjoyed coming back from, from national team duty, and he came back to Stevie Smith and a new coach. And is that a slight dig to Russell Martin? Potentially, but I think it's dead easy to say everything Russell Martin done was mince because that's just how we all feel about him right now. But evidently there will be parts of good within there, not that we've seen much of those parts, but there will be parts that undoubtedly were good. He was a Premier League manager, there will be some semblance of people know what they were sort of doing in training. But Danny Röhl's got a nice easy tap in for me of make training the last couple of days, you make it simple, you keep it neat, and you make it fun. Take the negativity that's been around the air and just simply say, look, it doesn't exist anymore, it's day one.
Definitely, and we'll come on to kind of what he's probably had to do. And I think it's what you're saying there has been proven by what we saw was the first half after Stephen Smith had them for a couple of days. I know it didn't work out, and I think that was probably down to the players. But what you could see in the first half of the game against United was a team that basically had the shackles off and believed that what they were doing. They just had to, if they kept it simple and they just attacked, the pressure was off them. So I think we need to be brutally honest that if that's how he wants to start his reign, he's got a better chance of getting results when it comes to that. But we'll get into it in a little bit more detail. But first of all, just a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, just want to say thank you to Thomas, the Hearts fan, who has become a member on YouTube. We do like when they don't beat us, we like our cousins along the M8. So thank you so much to Thomas for being a member. If you want to be a member, please go onto the old YouTube and give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. That's free. If you want to be a member, please contribute. It goes towards things like the brand new branding that we've got. There's been a lot of work's been put into it to try and make it look far more professional, and we appreciate obviously the boys that put so much work into that. And of course, I want to say a thank you as well to our new sponsors, the Bluebells Bar in Puerto del Carmen in Lanzarote. So if you're over there, give the Journal a shout out, and I'm sure the boys over there will sort you out with perhaps a nice cold beverage in the sun. Been very multilingual tonight, haven't I? I've had German, I've had Spanish. God, I'm just man of many talents. You're just a shame I'm not getting to hear it match up. Jock, the breakdown of Danny Röhl, I think probably the best way to start is we'll start with him first. Obviously, in his press conference, what he wanted to talk about was how his team's going to play, which I think all managers do.
Yep.
Managers, head coaches, whatever you want to call them, they're all essentially doing the same job. It's that they're paid to deal with the team. So what he's obviously wanted to emphasise very, very quickly is that he wants his teams to be positive. He wants his team to be aggressive. But what he wants them to do is to work quicker. He made a comment. I can't, forgive me for not remembering if it was in the press conference or if it was in the chat with fan media. But he basically said that there comes a point when the team breaks forward and you essentially have the back five to play against. We chose routinely to turn back the way, whereas at that point we should be pressing forward, which sounds so simple. But we were never doing that. And that's something that we should have been doing, because we as a team who have, compared to most of the teams we play, we have greater resources, we have players with better ability, we should be more on the front foot. We should be more aggressive. And I mean, when it comes, if you're having a doubt about what Danny Röhl is as a manager, I mean, these are the things you want. These are the things we thought we were going to get from Russell Martin. But what I think Danny Röhl clearly has is the background and the education from, like I mentioned, he'd been in Germany, he'd been at the Red Bull Group, whose coaches are all taught to be aggressive. And I think obviously it makes a lot more sense that he has the knowledge to be able to implement this.
Yeah, and so you touched on that, and he talked about that himself, talking about energy and hunting down the ball, and buzzwords that I think we did get from Russell Martin as well. So I think there will be some fans will probably be a wee bit sceptical because it's going to be a case of we've heard this all before. And to me, his job is to get the players to do that for 70 minutes, 80 minutes, 90 minutes, not the first 50 minutes of a game, where we see it in flashes where we start off great, and then as the game goes on, we just sort of tail off, and then we're in a bit of a struggle. I think that's something that we should be deploying at Ibrox against every team we play, because we're struggling at home right now to have any sort of form, and we have done for the best part of 5 months now. So if he can take what he's preaching and put that into a Rangers team at Ibrox, that's your building block, because then you can take that and then you can start deploying that in away games where we're expected to go and do the same thing. But I think, as he said, his job is to get back-to-back wins. Again, it's another big task. But looking at it on paper, it looks fantastic. And when he says it, we're all mesmerised by it and going, "This is what we want. This is what we've been expecting for the last couple of years." I do think now we've probably got the balance in the team of youth that can go and do that for the 90 minutes, more so than we did maybe a couple of years ago, where you've got the blend of youth and sort of experience. Guys like Rothwell and stuff, I don't think that he's going to feature much or will be able to deploy what he's asking for now. But certainly the younger members of the team will be able to be this, aggressive, high pressing, win the ball back, counter attack at speed, all those things that we want to see, because it's just not happened since Russell Martin came in, and that's what we were promised. So it is going to be a case of we're probably not going to see it straight away, but if we do, it might be in flashes here and there, because, as he said, his job is to get points, get wins, and then build upon that. And I think that's something that's as fans, we're just going to have to maybe sit back and just appreciate that he's got a bit of work to do.
I think a bit of work to do is probably the understatement of the century, if I'm being brutally honest with you, Jock. I think he's got a hell of a job in his hand. But, like I say, a lot of this, it's all well and good saying what you want to do, but it's putting it into practice that seems to be the issue. And the thing with that, Stevie, is that what I think he's going to seriously need for the players is buy-in. And we obviously, sometimes you see this with with younger coaches, it's perhaps a case of some players don't buy in because it's a case of, shows your medals. And, he wasn't a decorated player. Whilst he's worked at big clubs, he's worked in high pressure environments, he's not been the kind of main man. So it's going to be difficult for him. But what I think the players will respond to is they're clearly needing something different. They're needing a different voice. They're needing a different outlook, because what Russell Martin's clearly struggled to do was convey what he wanted to the players. Something that I like within the first part of this, what we're talking about, is in possession, is that he wants to talk about being the most dangerous in the first 5 seconds after winning the ball. But obviously, it sounds so simple, but how many times did we win the ball and go back the way? It's not just a Russell Martin thing, to be honest. We've seen it with other managers, and we've seen Rangers teams be sometimes notoriously negative and not have the ability or the desire to, in their mind, be the first thought saying, get the ball and turn forward and drive with it. We did see it in the first half against United, where a lot of the times, Taylor Asgard, I think, has been the perfect example of it. For most of the games he's played at Rangers, he's played back the way. He's been passing the ball back the way. Instead of using the attributes that he's got, he's clearly got very good close control. He's a big lad. He's got physicality. These are attributes you should be using driving forward. And if this is obviously the way that Danny Röhl wants to implement his team, then these are the kind of guys you need to build a team around, isn't it?
Oh, 100%, mate. I mean, Mitch was saying there before about he thinks there was some good stuff that Martin must have done. I disagree. I think the guy should get done under the Terrorism Act for what he done to Rangers. Seriously, nightmare. But
Sorry, Stevie.
yeah, aye, you mute yourself. But yeah, I think there is talent in that squad. But as Joke's kind of like outlined there, it's like there's so many facets that he needs to improve, like fitness, the mentality. It all comes together. But I do like the idea, like the hunting in packs. But we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We've all seen successful Rangers teams. We know what it takes. It's just that organisation, that desire. Talent, obviously. But I'd say desire above all. And everybody needs to be pulling in the same direction. But yeah, I think there's enough there in the squad to really, let's go for the quadruple. No, I'm only kidding. But, I think you mentioned, obviously, Antman, great winger. Gassman on the other wing. There's talent. Even Asgard, physically, he reminds me of Laudrup. Like really tall, strong. Obviously, no as talented as a player or anything like it, but there's definitely enough there to get a tune out of. And there's still plenty to play for the season. But yeah, I think interestingly, the goalkeeping coach, he obviously came for Wednesday in the summer. Butland to me has been the most improved player. I think like a lot of Rangers fans had written him off last season, but this guy's obviously worked on his mentality, and it's been a huge impact. So if the guys he's bringing in to support him, one of them's a psychologist as well as a coach, it's obviously a part that we really need to focus on, aside for everything else we need to work on. But yeah, I think the early signs are promising. Definitely, a lot of kind of negativity in some quarters, but I think you actually look at the guy, look at that. His background's really good. So yeah, I'm quite confident this is going to work.
Well, and we'll might come on to sports psychologists. We call that foreshadowing in the media. Craig, obviously we've talked about the kind of first half of it there, but one thing I think that we've been very, very notorious for as a team is it's been far too easy to play through. Far too easy. It was far too soft in terms of pressing, in terms of defensive lines. He's clearly a good tactician. This is one of the things, you don't work at Bayern Munich, you don't work under, Hansi Flick in the German national team if you don't have an idea about, tactically setting a team up. The first thing that he talks about, the first line there is obviously that he's all about structured pressing and hitting triggers. But I think the most important thing about that is that it's man orientated in the first line. How many times have we been moaning for this about it's all about zonal marking? And let's be honest, modern football is a mixture of both. But I think one thing that we've been notorious is probably putting too much emphasis on zonal marking and this kind of part of it where, again, it goes back to what we've been talking about. Make it simple. Pick a man, stick with him, and win your headers. It sounds really simple, but that's probably what he's got to implement at the start of his reign, is just making this harder to beat by keeping it simple. Would you agree with that?
I would exactly, yes. And I think another thing that I would say is, I think the mark of a good coach is not just about him implementing his style, which we've seen to our detriment, but it's actually finding out from those players what they're good at, that they can actually speak to them and go, well, we know you can pretty much do anything, but what are you best at? And then you adapt that style only a little bit within what you do to suit the strengths of the players that you've got as well. And if you can get that blend right, because they'll start enjoying the game again if they're actually playing the game that they like. You've got a striker who's rubbish in the air, don't pump long balls at him. If you've got defenders who aren't comfortable passing the ball around, try and find a way of just missing that out. It's again, it's simple, and there will be all of those tactics and all of his philosophy and all of the other stuff. But one of the things that they did say about him at Wednesday was that he was very adaptable, and he could actually change his style to suit the team and to suit the situation, to suit the opposition. And I think that's gold dust in football these days. So I hope that he's able to do that, and I hope he's able to work with the players to make sure that whatever style we end up playing in, it's one that they've all bought into. So, because the overcoaching issue or the undercoaching or didn't look like we've been coached at all stuff under Martin was probably the biggest problem. And you're right, defensively we're a bomb scare, but those players know how to defend. Is it not just the fact that they're not working as a unit? And if they actually start to understand where X, Y, and Z is going to be, then maybe we'll be a better team overnight.
I'd like to think so. Like I say, it's about just kind of adapting. And Mitch, just before I come on to you, I just want to give a shout out to a couple of people. Obviously, thank you so much, Gaming for Dads, becoming a member. We do appreciate, of course, any new member. And of course, the long time watcher Chaz, who's given 5 Rangers Journal memberships. Thank you so much, Chaz. Big shout out to yourself. Mitchell, Craig Ayre's talking about obviously adaptability and the opportunity to change. One thing that football has probably become prone to is people with philosophies. We've seen it a lot with Ruben Amorim. He's become the kind of poster boy of it. As guys who it's like, well, I'm going to fit players into my philosophy as opposed to fitting my philosophy around players. The adaptability at the moment is something we need the most of, because we need to find a guy that's going to get everything out of this squad that he can, because unfortunately at the moment we've got basically a brand new squad that doesn't seem prepared for the challenges of what we face as a football club on a almost on a weekly basis at this point. At this point, do you think that what he's probably got to do is give everybody a clean slate? Do you think that obviously in the last day or two we've seen we've seen the long forgotten Clinton Nsiala be back with the first team? He's lost his banishment. I wanted to bring it up with you because I know you're a big Nsiala boy. But it's one of those things that I think what he's obviously got to look at is he's not afraid to chop and change to try and get results. And at this moment in time, that's probably what we need, isn't it?
I think there's a few things with Danny Röhl. I know obviously when he was in the run-in and before he came here, I feel like me and Craig were two people shouting into the void that Danny Röhl was in fact a phenomenal young coach. And I think genuinely there's very much a Rangers level of snobbery from all of us, myself included, to a certain level of, well, he's only come from Sheffield Wednesday before coming here. He went down there and took what can only be described, the house was on fire and the Wains were upstairs and nobody could get in. That's how much of a mess Wednesday were when he went there. And essentially had the group of players he assembled were ragtag misfits, free transfers, and pretty much the local plumber, anyone that could put a pair of boots on and that he didn't need to pay a fee to sign. That's pretty much what he got to work with. He took a team that was arguably top half League One at best quality on paper, and got them not only to survive in the Championship but got them top half to keep them safe and keep that. Without doing that, well, Sheffield Wednesday probably wind up in a really, really bad situation, not just because of the current owner, but because of the lack of TV money that gets funneled down through League One and everything else. And one of the biggest things that Danny Röhl done at Sheffield Wednesday was youth development. And I think it's one of the biggest things that our squad in particular, given not just the players that we've signed in the summer, but the players that are already in the house, they're screaming for a manager to trust them and thrust them into the limelight to go and do it. Guys like, and I'm looking at young players like Finlay Curtis, my boy Clinton and Nsiala. Nsiala, for example, this is a brand new clean slate. Whatever happened between him and Russell Martin, his development that he made last season has been stunted by Russell Martin. There's no other way to, dress that up. That's a boy who last season made, 10, 12 first-team appearances, give or take. That's a player that should have taken the Leon Balogun spot, that centre-back 4, centre-back 5 slot in the first team. And for whatever reason, inside 2 or 3 weeks, Russell Martin said, nah, son, you're not the boy for me, and went away and popped him away and done what he's done. The rest is history, as they say. But there's young players in that squad like Curtis, Nsiala, Cameron, even Giga at the back, Fernandez at the back. We've got Magoma. These are young players that are crying out for a manager to mould them and show them, right now we are breaking through and we're on step 2 of our senior level football journey. But they need a coach and a manager to grab them by the scruff of the neck and take them to step 3 and 4 by giving them clear guidance and structure. Something that I think Russell Martin was really, really poor at doing. When you look at particularly the substitutions, it was always experienced players coming off the bench because of the mess that we were in, or because of the mess we were in, it was throw enough muck at the wall and see what sticks. I'm going to shove on 5 attacking players and stick my finger in the air and hope for the best. No being funny, none of us have got a coaching badge between us and we could have done that. And I think that's what the players and Danny Röhl can do in particular with that fresh slate for everybody. Players like, I look at Jigga. Jigga was a monster for those first few games that he played with us. he had the Bruges, he had Brugesgate, and nobody wants to talk about Bruges again. But it happened. It was a real life thing. He was there. A young player like that we've seen with the likes of Leon King against Liverpool. We've seen what a night like that can do for a youngster. And instead of putting an arm around his shoulder and giving him a chance, domestically, you take him out the firing line for a game or two. That game in between the two legs, you take him out it and take him out the second leg. But at no point was Jigga given another start to prove himself, to say, look, I've had a couple of weeks to get over it. My gaffer spoke to me, he's gave me a cuddle, all the rest of it. Time for me to go back to work again and just let that mistake be a mistake. None of these young players have had that. And I think it's quite good for these young players right now to say, well, look, everything is day one. You are still clay and you can be moulded. For the experienced players, if you're Danny Röhl, you lean on them, like you did at Wednesday with the Josh Windasses, with the Barry Bannons, the Callum Pattersons. Within the team, he had players that are arguably over the hill. No disrespect to them, just due to their ages now. But, as a 35-year-old man, I'm not running about for an hour, unless Atmanjano's got some sort of, peds in there or something. But genuinely, he had older players playing above themselves by simply taking ownership of the situation and being a guide for the young players on the park. Those 21, 20-year-olds, that keeper for Wednesday last season was only, give or take, 20, 21-year-old. He had experience in front of him talking him through games and how to get through it. And I think that's one of the biggest things that Danny Röhl can help here, because we have got a young, athletic, pacey squad, but just for the last couple of months, they've not really known what they're supposed to be doing. But yeah, sorry for the long-winded answer.
I mean, it wouldn't be. I mean, if you gave an answer that wasn't, the works of Shakespeare, then we think there's something wrong with you. Let's be brutally honest, Mitch. Jock, Mitch obviously is talking about the influence of the kind of senior players and stuff, but it's been a long-winded argument amongst the Rangers support that the so-called leadership group isn't really up to scratch. Let's be brutally honest. Russell Martin at the start of the season mentioned that it was, Jack Butland, James Tavernier, Dujon Sterling, who's not played, who missed the whole fiasco through injury. Kieran Dowell, these were guys that he implied as the senior group. So is it not a coincidence that the guys that were that these young players who are clearly young, very talented, Tello Asgard, Nasser Jiga, Jade Gassama, these are all players that should have someone to lean on, and they've just not had it, because the players that have been determined to be the leaders probably out with Jack Butland, because I think Jack Butland's been the guy that's really stepped up this season and proved his worth. They're probably just not really up to scratch, are they?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. I think that those kind of guys are expected to be the top performers in the team. So the younger ones can look at them, and at the end of 90 minutes, they can, if they're sitting and they don't get on, but they can sit and they're told to watch him and watch what he does. And majority of the time, they're not performing. Dale was in and out of the team, and when he come on, he stunk the place out majority of the time. Sterling injured. When he's on and he's in form, he's a Rolls Royce, because he can play anywhere, and he gives you 110%, and he gives you that energy and that drive in different areas of the park, and you work his socks off. Tavernier does what Tavernier does. It's he'll give you everything, but he maybe give you one goal or give you chances, but he also has that wee sleepy moment in him that can cause goals against them. And then Butland, up until, as you say, we were talking about in the summertime, was practically out the door because his form is horrendous, and he was just all over the place last season. But you have to look at, obviously, his personal circumstances. There was a lot going on around him, and I actually felt sorry for him towards the end of the season. But then, if it wasn't for him now, he's been our player of the month for the 2 months running, because he's been stellar. So I do think the leadership group, I think there needed to be more leadership from the group, if that makes sense. I do think that there should have been somebody else in there. But then who do you pick? you know, I mean, there was a change of 11, 13 players come in there over the summer, and it's hard to pick somebody from that group that's going to get thrusted into the senior leadership group within a brand new team. You would thought maybe Rothwell would do that, but again, performances aren't there, and the younger ones can't look to him and say, "Oh, I should be looking up and following what he's doing," and he's just not delivering on the pitch. And then the fans are getting on his back, but the fans are getting on all the players' back because it's just been a mess. Previous years, your senior leadership group was, Davis, Arfield, McGregor, these stellar, legendary status players for our club over the last 10, 15 years, and we just don't have that at the moment. There's nobody in the squad that kind of has that status, and I think that's maybe where we are lacking in terms of leadership within the squad as a whole, not necessarily just on the pitch, but as a squad overall. I think we're just maybe lacking a wee bit more grit and a wee bit more leadership, essentially, from the group of players, because it's a small group. I just don't think the characters are big enough. But then we're only seeing training videos, we're only seeing performances on match day from day to day. We're not in and around it 24/7 like those guys are. So they could come out and probably give us 10 reasons per player why they're in the leadership group because of how they are in the dressing room. It's just not something we see. We can only take it at face value, and that's, to me, I just think we're just lacking a wee bit more in that department.
I think we are. I think we're still at a stage where we're still trying to build something bigger and better. Stevie, I think probably we'll just kind of move it on a little bit from the kind of the state of the squad for the moment. I still have something to bring up about it, but what I wanted to focus on mostly tonight was obviously today the club had announced that Danny Röhl starting to build his backroom team. We were all kind of wondering who it was going to be. He did say that he was bringing 2 coaches in from Germany, and he was wanting to bring in a coach with, who was perhaps an ex-player or was, Rangers minded. He did say that he used Chris Powell at Sheffield Wednesday as a kind of go-between to try and help him understand the club. It's clearly something that worked for him. So he's going to want to do it again. The first name that we've been given was Matthias, just forgive me for a minute. It was Matthias Kaltenbach, who was actually at last his assistant at Ajax. Obviously, these are names that we are not particularly familiar with, but one thing I think you've probably got to look at there is that the clubs they've worked at, again, the guys they've worked with, they're clearly, credible candidates, and they're clearly guys that are very, very valued within football, and it's probably something that we need a little bit more of. If you look at, and I hate to keep harping back to it, but if you're looking at the guys you've brought in before who were, the highest part in football was being sacked by Carlisle, whereas these guys have worked under Julian Nagelsmann, who was at the time an up and coming coach, but eventually became manager of Bayern Munich, again Germany, and he's worked at Ajax. These are guys with serious credentials. I know he's a pro license holder as well. He's only 40 as well, so he's had a hell of a lot of experience at such a young age, probably the same as Danny Röhl. So these are guys that are coming in with fresh ideas, and they've learned so much. So surely to God, man, these are the guys that we should have been hiring in the first place.
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a step up in pedigree. Just look at that guy's CV. Röhl as well, and the other coach, they've obviously worked in far higher calibre clubs and with players compared to the previous lot. It's definitely encouraging. And they're obviously playing with better players or coaching better players, so the mentality is going to be there. Just kind of touching on what Jock said there, those players he listed about Davis, Arabo, McGregor, you know what they never needed? They never needed a cuddle match. Rangers players don't need cuddles. Rangers players need a kick up the backside. I think there's too much made. I get some players need an arm around them, that's a fair point, but something at Ibrox I don't think we need just now. I think they really need a lot of discipline, and that will improve their standards. But yeah, I think there's plenty there to say these guys are going to improve the players, because ultimately that's part of this new structure, isn't it? It's to sell players on at a profit. So that's got to be part of these appointments, is to really try and improve players. And the best, do you know what I was thinking? I think the best managers make leaders. Do you know what I mean? You look at the guys that Walter signed in the 90s, like random guys like Alec Cleland, or in his second spell, like Kirk Broadfoot. He got guys with the absolute best attitude and they got everything out of them, like every single ounce they put into their careers, and they become really decent players for the club and contributed. So maybe with these guys, it's maybe a case of really trying the same thing, just really improving what they've got, and with improving that, the mentality will come. But yeah, like you've clearly said there, Carlisle to like Ajax and Hoffenheim, it's somebody in the comments was saying, why didn't they get this guy in the summer? But I think Sheffield Wednesday still had a buyout clause of about 5 million. I suspect that was why it was. Because yeah, I agree with her, far rather having this conversation 4 months ago. But here we are. Hopefully it's the right guy now.
Would like to think so. Craig, just before I come on to you, I want to give a shout out to our newest sub, Ryan Moore. You are actually subscriber number 4,500 on the Rangers Journal. So just want to say thank you so much to Ryan. If you do like what you see, please don't hesitate to give us a like, share, and a subscribe. We're on all forms of social media, whether you like short form TikTok, whether you like the Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, we're on them all, and it does not cost you a single penny, and you will not get anything more in-depth for free about your favourite club, the Rangers, anywhere on the internet. I guarantee that. So again, thank you so much to Ryan for joining up. Just moving swiftly on, Craig, I mean, just obviously emphasise what Stevie said there. Sometimes you just need to find guys that know what they're talking about. I mean, Matthias seems to be a guy that clearly knows what he's talking about. He's obviously somebody that had the opportunity to just the bottom paragraph there was somebody like Hoffenheim. Their support wanted him to join and become their full-time head coach. So he's clearly a well-respected man within, a respected league in Germany. So he's clearly somebody that we've managed to identify and bring in and give him and the rest of the team the best of their abilities to make us better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's inevitable. I think from what we've seen this year, I don't think any of us recognise what's been going on. But Hoffenheim, in particular, is a bit of a European talent factory as well. And I think there's a player that you might have heard of called Jorginho Rutter, who would have been there around about the time that Kaltenbach was there, who went to Leeds United and now at Brighton and scoring goals every week, making a real fist in the Premiership. So, that's one example of a player that I've heard of that's come through potentially that. The one thing I would say, and a bit of a note of caution, is Alfred Schrader's reign at Ajax was a bit of a disaster. I know this because round about the time that Leeds were going down, they advertised for a number of managers, and Schrader was brought to Elland Road by the old board, and there were fan protests at Ajax trying to get him out, and fan protests at Leeds trying to stop him coming in. But it sounds to me like this guy, for the stuff that he's done before, and he's the assistant manager, not the actual figurehead, it's going to be a good thing for us as a club. And, yes, we do. The players do need to kick up the arse, but they need to be told how good they are, and they need to be made to feel like they're part of it, and they need to be feeling that they're part of something that's going somewhere. And I think these guys can probably give them that. I really do hope so, because almost as much as tactics, having an environment that works is probably, in my view, as important as the actual, you stand here, you go there aspect of tactics.
I think it is. And probably, obviously, he's been brought in as perhaps the main part of the tacticians, and he's probably more on the football side. But Mitch, I'll give you the first word on probably the other side of it that I think perhaps the team needs a more focused on at the moment is obviously the mental aspect of it. There's been a lot of claims thrown at the team about mental strength, mental weakness, perhaps more likely than anything else. But he's also brought in Sasha Lenser, who is of course who was his sports as performance manager. Sorry, he was his performance manager at Sheffield Wednesday, but he's also worked as a sports psychologist at some pretty big names there. If I'm being brutally honest with you, he's clearly a very, very talented talented individual who spent the majority of his life working around high level athletes and trying to help them adapt their mindset to perform at the top level. He's another guy that they'll know that he's worked within the Red Bull group. He's worked for RB Leipzig. He's worked at Schalke, and I think a lot of people don't perhaps understand just how big Schalke are as a club within Germany. You know, they're a massive football club. They've got one of the biggest, you know, official supporters groups anywhere. I think they've got like 200,000 or 300,000 official fans across the world. They're a huge club. And of course, he's worked at Manchester United, but under that was at the time Ralf Rangnick was there, and I know they were a bit of a disaster, but he was brought in to try and turn them round, and they didn't really back him in the way that, you know, he told them to. I think there was a little bit of a running gag where he told them to do something, and they essentially done the opposite. You know, so that would have been, you know, mentally draining on the club. So he's probably good that he was there to try and make them better. But he's clearly somebody that needs to be brought in. I think there needs to be serious work done on the players and trying to make them believe that they're as good as, you know, we know they can be. I think they've shown in small spells that they're clearly talented footballers, but it's about trying to get them to buy in and trying to get them to perform at the highest level possible. Do you agree?
Absolutely, mate. I'm huge fan of sports psychology. Like, really, it's something that it's one of these things that I genuinely am quite passionate about reading about and finding more out about. You look at the Man United period, and I would kind of pop that to the corner because it was a 6-month spell with it and what was already a mess at the club. 6 months working with a sports psychologist, given the volume of games that they had and everything else, isn't really long enough, given all the international breaks and everything else and the players that would have been away. There's not an awful lot for me, I don't think, that he could have done in that time frame, other than basically just iron out a few players and maybe tell them, look, you're better than how you're playing, get out your own head and get your finger out, pretty much. But I think when you look at that, when you look at the players, for example, that Schalke sold during that window, you know, during that 2-year period, there was a lot of, you know, there's not too many 50, 60 million pound players, but there's a lot of 15 to 30 million pound players that Schalke moved on in that period. That's the sort of thing that's the sort of model that, as a club, we are trying to push ourselves to, as stop selling players for £5 and £6 million and start selling players for £10 million, £11 million to get things moving in that front. And one of the biggest things that you can do with that is you can have all the talent in the world. Stevie touched on it earlier. If you've not got the gonads between your legs for it and the mental toughness for it, then how is an elite level top 5 league club going to take a punt on you? Because £10 million, £11 million for a top 5 league club isn't an awful lot of money. It's a lot of money to us in retrospect, but £10 million, they still want to see a return on their investment. If let's say, for example, a Gladbach's buying a player from us for £10 million, their ultimate goal at the end of it is to see Dortmund, Munich, you know, one of the top 5 Spanish clubs, pick that player up for 30, 40 million pound plus. At the other end of it, they want to see return. And I think it's everybody's questioned the mentality of this squad over the last couple of years. Surefire way to fix it, put the doctor in the house.
Certainly is. Stick the doctor in the house, and I think it's got to turn into, you know, like almost like a Freudian scene where they're lying on the big couch and he's sitting smoking a pipe and like, right now, tell me what's happened, tell me what's been going on. And let's be honest, I think there probably needs to, whilst there obviously been a lot of, if we want to be, for a lack of a better word, heart to hearts amongst the players, and I don't think there's been enough. You know, I think Stevie's emphasised it a lot. There's got to be a lot of boots up the backside. To be honest with you, I think the time for anxiety and mollycoddling is over, because it's clearly not what whatever form of arm round the shoulder they've given, it's not worked. It's clearly not worked. So there needs to be better ways to try and get more out of this squad. And it's just because what we've seen has been an absolute farce, if I'm brutally honest with you. Jock, Sasha Lenser, obviously who we're talking about, he seems to be a guy that what's the emphasis is not just about sitting, talking to players, trying to get into their heads. He's clearly a very, very talented coach as well. And what he seems to be able to do is allow the players to understand not just what they're doing, but why they're doing it, and what goes through their head, and the opportunities that they're going to build by being aggressive and by implementing the positive mindset, what they're going to get out of it in the bigger picture. Because I don't think they understand what they're going to get, because the players in the first half, again, I'm going to go back to Saturday, because I thought it was an excellent example of the players in the first half done so much right. And you'll say, this is what you can get out of this. You're going to play well, you're going to get results, but then they resort back to the fear and the panic after Dundee United have a decent spell. So it's about trying to get them to, to integrate the positives and be more, and I'm trying to word it better, to perhaps realise the outcomes, that if they put more into it, they're going to reap the rewards in the long term. So I think this is the kind of guy that we really need. And who's been there before? I'd be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure of the in and outs of the psychology side of Rangers, but I don't really think there's been much in way of it. And it's part of the, it's kind of part of the way of the world now that, football is just as much, kind of mental, and how you're going to make it at the top, mental toughness, as opposed to just pure football ability.
Yeah, it's just the way football's going into it, and it's the way it's a societal thing as well. The way you talk to people and the way you approach people's changing now. Whereas before, like if you listen to all the stories of the boys coming up through the ranks, they're cleaning boots and they're getting their backsides handed to them by senior players at the time, and that was them character building. And now character building's taking your own wins to go see Rangers play and seeing how crap they are. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. But yeah, I mean, this is just the way it's going, and we just have to embrace this new way of doing things. Whereas I know our fan base is crying out and we're traditionalists and stuff. I know that, but we need to find this balance. And somebody like this who's got great experience across a range of different clubs and different leagues, can only be good for what we have in the building, and can only be good for what obviously is going to come in the building January and the summertime as well. Like you say, that it's you look at the first half performance on Saturday, and the first 45 minutes was great, and it was just a shame we couldn't get more goals. But if they could have took that and then come out the second half, first 10, 50 minutes, and just played the same way, I think they would have been fine. But because Dundee United came out and started throwing their weight about and putting in a bit of tackles, they shrunk. And it's not the first time the team shrinks. One person takes a hit, instead of somebody else going, right, he's hit him, I'm going to hit him next time I'm close to him, just to sort of balance it out, because that's what it is. They made it a battle, and they knew that we couldn't cope with that battle. And they got the goal, and then straight again they closed in again, and then they got the second goal. And granted, it's a worldly goal, but that's just the way it seems to go for Rangers. Whenever we're under the cosh, it's taking something a bit special, and then the tails is up, and then they're flying. Granted, we got the equaliser, and we did show a bit of character. I don't think we would have got the equaliser under Martin. I think the work that Stevie Smith done in that week and a half that he had them was probably what seen them through and got them back to a draw, whereas previously I don't think we would have seen that. So yes, there's a lot of work needs to be done in terms of what's there, because again, you always go back to this, there's just scar tissue. We need to peel that off, just rip the plaster off, and just say, look, this is your mentality going forward as a collective, as a group. When one of is hurting, we're all hurting, so we all need to come together, and we all just need to try and get this over the line. And I'd like to think that he's building a team that can do that. If he's going to his tried and tested people that's been with him, especially at Sheffield Wednesday, where they were right up against it, where no budget, and it was basically what we have in the building is what we have to make do. And he proved that, and he did that. So I do think that is something that sets him up in good stead for coming to a massive job that he had here.
Can I come in really quickly on that psychologist thing?
Of course, Stephen.
Just like 30 seconds, thanks. It's the finest margins. He's not going to remold a guy's entire mind, but it's getting an extra 5 or 10%. That's the key. And it's, for me, it's like you make a mistake, okay, forget about it, put it away, deal with it after the game. But in that moment, concentrate again. I think a lot of players at Ibrox, when they make a mistake, they go into a shell and they hide. I think it's getting rid of that. I think that's what's going to come and really hopefully benefit us, is making them a bit braver, because too many times you see players and they just disappear. I'll forgive a player making a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes, but you need to go again. That's what Rangers is like, taking that ownership. Go again. Don't be scared. I think that's what this is going to hopefully come to fruition with.
I think so. I think that's something it's so important. Like you say, Stevie, it's something we've been doing the complete opposite of. It's been a case of I've made a mistake, it gets in their head, and then within the 30 seconds they made the same mistake again, or they've done something even worse and it's cost us a goal, and then we give ourselves the uphill battle. I think the perfect example was against Bruges after the mistake that cost us the first goal. We're again just going right down a slippery slope, and it just snowballs. And like I say, using the Sheffield Wednesday, unfortunately, we don't always want to use those kind of examples because they were a total basket case. But it's a great example that they were able to completely dig themselves out of a hole that we didn't think they would ever get themselves out of. So you've got to look at that, and Clay clearly knows what they're talking about. Just before we move on to the kind of last point, the final part of his team that he did mention was that he wanted to bring in a quote Rangers-minded coach. It was somebody that had been. They did say it's somebody that's played here, somebody that's been integrated within the kind of walls of Ibrox and Auchenhowie in the past. There's been a few names floated about, but I'm going to just come round to four of you and just if you could just give me a name and why you think it should be. First of all, Jock.
I'd go Stephen Davis. I'll keep the staunchness going. He's been there, been at the club, big ambassador for the club, speaks highly of the club. He's had a stint there where he helped us out for a wee bit there. I'd like to think he'd come back and just give that insight to these players and be that part of that leadership and be that figurehead that we need, because he just has all the attributes. He was a top class player. He's a top class guy. He doesn't have 100 and something appearances and being one of the top appearance holder for a nation in Britain. Without having something about him, I just think he'd be great to just even to be in and around the guys and just lean on them and give them a bit of experience and a bit of help whenever they need it.
I think that's probably going to be a popular choice. Stevie, can you go anything different? Are you going to stick with it?
I think it's a great shout for Jock. I'd be delighted to have Davo back for all the reasons that Jock's listed. I say this every pod. The guy's going to think I'm stalking him, but Kevin Thompson, for me, he just embodied Rangers. He's a pure winner, great desire, worked under Walter, had a great relationship there with him. He really understood what Rangers was. And he's had one season as a manager and he won the league at Celtic Hearts. I know it's Celtic Hearts, but people were clamouring for Barry Ferguson to come back. He's done nothing outside the Rangers as a coach, as a manager. Where this guy's actually had success. Pretty much for the same reasons for Stephen Davis. I think you can make the argument for Kevin Thompson. A really good candidate for a coach, and definitely on the staff at some level.
It's hard to argue. I'm not Kevin Thompson's always been a popular appointment, but it always baffles me that there's been so many opportunities for him to come in and he's never came in. So I always kind of do have a bit of thing in the back of my head. But this could be always. There's always been plenty of opportunities for us since we seem to sack a manager every 20 minutes. Craig, are you going to stick with your man across the water? Are you going to stick with Davis?
I mean, for goodness sake, like if I'm given a choice between some people and Stephen Davis, unless it's a member of my family, it's not really an issue. It's Davo all the way. However, I would say that somebody that hasn't been mentioned yet, and if Röhl knows him or the other backroom guys know him, Lee Wallace could also be a very, very good choice in that respect, because he knows what it's like to be here when it's really on the down low. Now, I know Kevin Thompson has been sort of in and around, as is Davo, but Lee Wallace was right in the middle of all of that. And he never shirked. He kept going, stayed here. I think he's another one that should be in the mix. That said, I would have gone Davo and then I would have gone Kevin Thompson, but I thought I would throw him in anyway as a third like.
Let's be honest, Craig. You said you said you would pick your family over Davis, but let's be honest. I think you'd pick Davis over your family and all.
I said that was the only time it would be an issue. That's the thing, Ross. It's like I'd still be thinking about it, but it's Davo on every other level.
Of course, it's hard. I mean, it's hard to argue. Mitchell, you've been arguing in the comments with Paul. Jermaine Defoe, is he your man?
Well, to be fair, I mean, the boys have stole all my other answers. So I genuinely, Defoe, you've seen obviously in the lead up, obviously manager announcement and everything else, that man still clearly loves this club. Like, he holds a great admiration for the club and everything the club stands for. He's been highly, highly regarded down at Spurs for the work that he was doing down there as well. And again, a man that knows the DNA of the club and he knows what it takes. He was a man that was also part of winning 55. It doesn't hurt to have a player like that around the club. But I think, in all honesty, any of the lads mentioned, I'd be more than delighted with. And even in the comments there, seeing names like Maurice Ross getting mentioned about there as well. The, the way that it was kind of positioned about an ex-player coming in was they don't necessarily need to be on the day-to-day coaching role. It's somebody there to basically be the fibre, like somebody to show new players the fibre of the club. And I think you don't need to have, and I'm going to kind of completely undo something that I said on Sunday. Stevie was there. I don't think you need to have the biggest coaching history to do something like that. It doesn't matter what you've done elsewhere when your job is breed the brand into the players. Show them that in this club, this is why it's a privilege to play for Rangers and not just any other football club.
I think so. I think you made a really good point there, and Big Shog's put it in. I was a big advocate of Neil McCann coming in when Kevin Muscat was linked. I mean, how I feel about Muscat, but I thought Neil McCann made a lot of sense. You talk about being there when it was bad. Neil McCann was here last year when it was bad. Barry couldn't get a win at home, and I've always had a lot of time for Neil McCann. I think he's always spoke really well. I know sometimes he's annoyed some people with his comments in the media, but I think when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of standing up for Rangers, he's always been, kind of somebody that's done it, and I've always had a lot of time for him. Gentlemen, I know we're kind of running a little bit over time, and the boss man's going to put our backsides for it, but it's an exciting new era for Rangers, and I think what we've probably all got to, what we're all in agreement with at the moment is that it's a clean slate. We've heard from the managers. We know the management team. Sorry, they've made a mistake. They've owned up to it. We need to move on. I know we've mentioned it a couple of times, but we're not going to keep harping back to Russell Martin and all these things that have happened. It's in the past. Danny Röhl's here. He's a manager. He's a head coach. He's going to get support. He'll get the support of the fans. I think we're probably all in agreement with that. That even guys that aren't popular appointments they always at the start get the support of the fans. The fans will always back them until they get a reason not to. Sometimes it just comes quicker for some people than others. And Danny Röhl, he's clearly a far more popular appointment than his predecessor. So we'll move on from that. Gentlemen, before we finish up, is there any kind of last wee points you wanted to make about the team?
Do a prediction for tomorrow.
You can certainly do a prediction for tomorrow if you want. Jock, first, start with you.
Obviously, we need a win, but given it's his first game, I'm just more interested to see how he's going to set them up. So I'm more looking just to see what way he set them up and how they responded to the couple of days that they've had with him. Obviously, I'm not expecting miracles, but tomorrow I'd even take a draw just to get a point on the board because we're desperately needing something positive out of this European campaign. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. So I'm going to say 1-1.
1-1. Take that, Stevie.
I'd love to see a boring 0-0. Clean sheet would be amazing. Really would. Can't remember last time we had a clean sheet, so that would be a starting point for me. Obviously, you want to win the game, but probably 4-3 or something. But yeah, a draw would be good. But hope for an odd goal victory. We'll see.
Craig, are you going to stick with the draw, or are you going to give us the win that we need?
The only prediction I'd be happy to make is that I'm going to be actually looking forward to watching it for the first time in about 4 months, and I think that's the real difference. I wouldn't have a clue how it's going to end up because we just don't know what he's done with them over the last couple of things. The boys have been safe and gone for that, and I think that's right. But the best thing is the mood music's changed at the club in the space of 2 days. People are actually excited about this, ready to give it a chance. And let's get tomorrow out of the way, and then we'll start making predictions over Kelly, I think, is the one. But yeah, draw would be fine.
Mitch, you taking a draw? Are you going to take a win?
I'm taking a win. Scrappy 1-0. Doesn't have to be fancy. Doesn't have to be all thriller, no filler. I'll take filler, no thriller. Give me 1-0 and just get the train rolling.
Future indeed. I'm going to say 2-0. I think we're just going to get that. We're going to make it simple. New manager bounce. Bran are a team. No disrespect. We should be beating Bran. Let's be brutally honest. We've beaten far better teams at worse times over the last few years, and I'll say 2-0. I think Danny Röhl gets a victory in his first game. And that's to say, I'm probably more worried about Kelly come Sunday. To be honest, they're going to be far more difficult to deal with, I think. Folks, just obviously we're just going to wrap up there. I want to say thank you so much to, first of all, obviously our new members, Thomas, Gaming for Dads, Chaz for gifting memberships, and of course Ryan Moore, number 4,500. If you like what you see, of course I've already mentioned it, I will mention it again because we do really, really appreciate you giving us a like, a share, and a subscribe. Watch us on the old YouTube machine. It obviously helps us out, helps us produce better content for you. This is what's all. We do all this for you because we love Rangers. We love talking about Rangers, and you know this is why we do it. We just think it's the best thing in the world for us. Let's be brutal honest. We love doing it. We love interacting with you all as well. So many comments. Unfortunately, I'm sorry I couldn't bring them all up. If I brought them all up, we'd be here to Christ the next week. But again, I just want to say thank you so much. Firstly to Jock.
No, Ross, thanks for having me. It's nice to be on the panel for a change and not hosting. So it was always good to talk Rangers with you guys.
And thanks to Stevie.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure, and thanks to everybody for contributing. Appreciate that.
Of course. Craig.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ross, and to the rest of the guys as well. Onwards and upwards, eh?
Onwards and upwards. And Mitch, you can just stay on here for another wee 5 minutes to make up for the 5 minutes you missed at the. You can just sit and talk every day yourself if you want. Although
Here's a better idea. Why don't all of you just go and hurry up and go and get the Dugs? That's what I'm here for.
Listen, I've got a Doug sitting there. He's been listening to this the whole night. He'll be up for it.
Well, don't hide them.
Again, of course, folks, thank you so much for joining us. Tomorrow night, the boys will be back tomorrow afternoon. Obviously, it's an early kickoff. We'll be back with your pre-match build-up. And, of course, you'll get your post-match reaction after, hopefully, the first win of the Danny Röhl era. And, of course, please remember, every night is your Rangers Journal night. And we'll talk to you again very, very soon. Good night.